each discipline separately and is restricted to 1 or 2 volume sets which are handy to use. Hence, it is also known as subject encyclopedia. It is a ready reference aid for the specialists who want to trace information about a particular subject. It aims to serve subject specialists and explains the subject elaborately. It is a very good source to get accurate information on any subject and also provides background information in detail and gives articles to readers about the subject by making it interesting. McGraw-Hill Encyclopedia of Science and Technology. Sybil P. Parker is the editor-in-chief and published by McGraw-Hill Book Company, New York. It is an international reference source and it aims to serve the needs of all those who are interested in science and technology in this era. It was first published in 1960. It provides more accurate, more attractive and better organized format. It gives all important developments and achievements. International Encyclopedia of Social Science. It is published by Macmillan and Company and edited by David L. Sills. It provides information about rapid development of the social science throughout the world. It covers subjects such as economics, political science, geography, law, history, sociology, psychiatry, anthropology, and statistics. It consists of 3 types of indexes, that is, main alphabetical exhaustive index, alphabetical list of all articles, and classified list of articles. Encyclopedia of Library and Information Science. It is edited by Alan Kent and published by Marcel Decker, New York. It is the first expansive and standard encyclopedia in library and information science. It is highly useful to librarians, information scientists, bibliographers, documentalists, system analysts, researchers, and students in this field. The subject covered in this encyclopedia is related to only library science, covering full subject in 35 volumes. Volumes 36 to 42 are the supplement volumes which are published bi-yearly. Other examples are Encyclopedia of World Art, Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, and finally Encyclopedia of Mathematics. Encyclopedia is a very common and familiar reference source. It is the first source to be consulted for getting background knowledge of queries. It helps to find out information on subject in every field of knowledge. It provides systematic summary of all information significant to mankind. Hence, every library has reasonable collection of encyclopedias. Let us now move on to discuss directories. The word directory is derived from the Latin word directorium, which means alphabetical listing of inhabitants of a region. It is a book of directions. ALA Glossary of Library Terms defined directory as a list of persons, institutions or organizations systematically arranged, usually in alphabetical or classed order, giving addresses, affiliations, etc. for individuals and addresses, offices, functions, and similar data for organizations. The amount of information varies from one directory to another. It provides information about organizations or institutions of different kinds, covering learned bodies, scientific societies, professional bodies, trade associations, etc. For each, variety of information like names, addresses, list of office bearers, qualification of membership, etc. are included. It forms rich sources of bibliographical information. A reference librarian first consult directory to get information about persons, institutions, association, and learned organization. Types of directories. Directories can be grouped into 5. They are local directories. It includes telephone directories, city directories, and includes directories of local schools, clubs, theatres, etc. Government directories. This group include guides to post offices, army and navy posts, and different services offered by federal, state, and city governments. It also includes international agencies. Institutional directories. It consists of lists of schools, colleges, libraries, hospitals, museums, foundations, and similar other organizations. Professional directories. It gives list of professional organizations like law, medicine, companies, etc. Trade and business directories. It lists out information about companies, industries, and personal services. Let us now move on to evaluate some well-known directories. The World of Learning. It is published by Europa Publications, London. It gives information about educational institutions from all over the world. It is considered as outstanding reference source. It also guide to international, national, scientific, and cultural organizations. Under each country, it gives brief account of learned societies, research institutions, libraries, museums, and details of universities in alphabetical order. It has detailed index of institutions at the end of the volume alphabetically. It is kept up to date by sending circular for each country to get feedback. Commonwealth Universities Yearbook, a directory to universities of the Commonwealth and the handbook of their association. It is published by Association of Commonwealth Universities London in 1914. It was formerly published under the title Yearbook of the Universities of the Empire. In 1948 to 1957, the title changed to the present title. It guides to 500 universities and institutions of Commonwealth and describes their various educational activities. The present edition has 2 volumes. Volume 1 gives details of councils of Commonwealth universities from Australia to Nigeria. Second volume gives details from Pakistan to Zimbabwe and also includes 4 appendixes such as ACU members of former Commonwealth countries, inter-university bodies, Commonwealth of Learning and Commonwealth Scholarship. It is revised every year. It provides 6 appendices and short bibliography. Directory of Special and Research Libraries in India. It is compiled by Indian Association of Special Libraries and Information Centers, Calcutta in 1985. It gives all the details about special and research libraries in India and it covers 173 libraries. Directory of Scientific Research Institutions in India. It is published by Indian National Scientific Documentation Centre, INSDOC, New Delhi, and now it is known as National Institute of Science, Communication and Information Resources, NISCARE. It provides information about all the scientific and research institutions in India and it covers only 2,231 institutions. Data collected by using questionnaire and some institutions' data taken from secondary sources. It has 3 types of index such as name index, subject index and index of periodical publications. Name index gives details about heads and divisional heads of institutions. Subject index gives details of research subject and facilities provided by each institution. Other examples are Directory of Indian Publishers and Distributors, Indian Library Directory, Universities Handbook, Times of India Directory and Yearbook including Who is Who. Directory is a rich source of information and it varies in kinds, sizes and purposes. It may occur as a separate publication or as a part of another publication. It aids the user to find out the primary and secondary sources. It is a ready reference source to find answers to a lot of queries. Let us now summarize the session. In this module, we discussed about various types of dictionaries, encyclopedias, and directories with examples. We tried to emphasize the use and importance of dictionary, encyclopedia, and directory. These secondary sources are very important sources to find out the concise, simplified, and digested information about the topic of inquiry. These are very good ready reference sources to retrieve various branches of knowledge. Hence, these are considered as the backbone of reference service. Now try to answer some questions. Write a short note on dictionary. Enumerate the difference between general dictionary and special dictionary. Explain the types of encyclopedia with examples. Write a short note on directory. Briefly evaluate Oxford English Dictionary. Briefly evaluate any one of the special encyclopedias. What are the different types of directories? What are the uses of encyclopedia? Briefly evaluate Directory of Indian Publishers and Distributors. Here are some reference books for further reading. Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary of Current English, Encyclopedic Edition, Oxford University Press, Oxford, 1992. The Hutchinson Encyclopedia, Helicon Company, 1997. ALA Glossary of Library Terms with a selection of terms in related fields, ALA, Chicago, 1943. Reference Service by Krishnan Kumar, Vikas Publishing House, New Delhi, 1994. Manual of Reference and Information Sources, Volume 2 by Seva Singh, BR Publishing Corporation, New Delhi. Information Sources and Services by PSG Kumar, BR Publishing Corporation, New Delhi, 2004. A Student's Manual of Library and Information Science, Volume 1 by PSG Kumar, BR Publishing Corporation, New Delhi, 2002. Thank you for watching today's program. We shall meet again with another topic. Goodbye.
Welcome to Interface. Today we have Professor Dr. Indumati from Institute of Mathematical Science, Chennai with us. Welcome to this program.
Thank you.
You are the coordinator for detectors and simulations of the India-based Neutrino Observatory being set up at Theni in Madurai district of Tamil Nadu.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
First of all, can you tell me why the project is set up at Theni?
Now, I'd like to put this in a little bit of a context before I begin. This is a very unusual project, and in fact it's unique of its kind in India, what we are trying to achieve over here. Because neutrinos are very unusual, because they are very weakly interacting, it is necessary to have neutrino detectors underground. In fact, the world over, neutrino detectors are underground, because otherwise there is this huge amount of cosmic ray muon flux that is always falling on us from all the stars and galaxies around us, and that will completely wash out our neutrino signal, which is extremely weak. Because we have to go underground, we have two choices. We either have to go to a mine or we have to go under a mountain. Because today neutrino physics is quite an old physics, actually it's no longer new. More than 30-40 years neutrino research has been going on around the world. The detectors have become larger and larger. That is because you want to take larger amounts of data to do very high precision physics experiments. Because of this, it's much more convenient to go under a mountain. The reason is that as the mountain rises in front of you, you are going to dig a horizontal tunnel into which you can drive in and drive out, and that makes not only for convenience, it also makes for the safety, because drive in and drive out tunnels are much safer than the mine shafts, which are very restricted in terms of time and the way in which you can go up and down. It's also a matter of convenience. So having said this, now we have to find a site which is near a mountain so that you can go under the mountain. But before I actually say why specifically we chose Pottipuram, I'd like to say a few things about the project itself. I mean, it's unusual because physicists usually put up experiments in labs, and these labs are in research institutes, universities or IITs like that. But here actually we are getting together to build a lab which is somewhere far away from all our institutes, because there are 26 research institutions, universities and IITs which are participating in this project, and while some R&D is going on in all of them, ultimately all these scientists and students will be involved in setting up the lab which we have chosen in this Pottipuram in Theni district. That is the closest village actually, that is the Pottipuram Panchayat in Tamil Nadu. But first of all, there is many kinds of interfaces. Since your project is called Interface, this program and show is called Interface. The first is the interface of theorists with experimentalists. As you said, I am one of the coordinators of the simulations group in INO, and when the experimentalists want to build their detector, they want to make sure their detector is optimized for the kind of studies that we want to do. This is primarily because neutrino physics is a very slow experiment. The count rates are very low, and because neutrinos are extremely weakly interacting, and because of that you want to double check your calculations, you want to do the theory correctly, you want to simulate exactly how it will be if you had put that detector underground. So there are these bunch of theorists who are working on it, and then the experimentalists come back to them and discuss whether the detectors can or cannot do the kind of science that the theorists are talking about. This is one level of interface. The other level of interface I already talked about, that so many research institutions and labs in India have come together for this, and the final unusual part is the students get trained in very different aspects of this experiment. When you put this all together, you find it is still not enough. The main interface that we needed to do for the lab is to consult geologists, environmental scientists and various engineers, because when you choose a lab like this, when you choose a site for a lab like this, which you know that will run for many decades, we would like it to be alive for 100 years if possible, long after we both have finished our physics and our lives. And in order to do this, we must get input on what quality of rock is required, because that is the primary criterion. We have to have good quality rock for the safety of this lab. It must last so many 100 years, and for this we go to the geologists, Geological Survey of India, who know all the rock types in India, tell us what is good quality rock where we can safely set up such a lab. So already we know that it has to be underground to get away from the cosmic radiation, and the physics demand requires that it must be at least 1 kilometer underground, and not just 1 kilometer underground in every direction. Suppose I have an underground lab here with a mountain around it, in every direction that I can see from the underground lab, I must have minimum 1000 meters of cover. That means 1000 meters of rock cover. So this is what the geologists tell us, that if you draw a line from Bangalore to Chennai and look south of that line, technically this is the south of the 13° north latitude, then you have good quality, very solid, very dense rock called Charnockite. And this is therefore found mainly in Kerala and Tamil Nadu states. But if you look at the kind of detector we will be putting there, these detectors work best in relatively low humidity, low rainfall environment, which means that since Kerala is so green because of its abundant rainfall, we prefer to go to Tamil Nadu. Even within Tamil Nadu, the next primary criterion we had for selecting the site was the ecological impact. We wanted to find a site which had minimal ecological impact, because you know that once you come to near mountains, this is where the forests of India are. And this input was given by the Salim Ali Center SACON, who did a survey of various sites that we had listed according to our physics requirements and the rock quality requirements, and we found the site which we believe has minimum environmental impact. So these considerations together brought us to Potipuram in Theni district.
Okay. So now you discussed about the environmental thing. So there was some apprehensions about how to drill the big cave.
Yes, yes.
So can you discuss further more on?
Yeah. So as I said again and again, we have also learned a lot. I mean, apart from physics, we have learned a lot of engineering and other sciences in this project, and we have been consulting various scientists and engineers about this project. So what we have learned from them, I also want to tell you that the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board has done the engineering study for how we are going to build this cavern and the lab. So what we need to do is that as the mountain rises, I've already told you we have a horizontal tunnel. This will be about nearly 2 kilometers long, about 1.91 is the projected distance, at the end of which there will be a complex of caverns that will hold our detector, which will do the neutrino experiments. Now, how are you going to actually make this tunnel? To make this tunnel, you have to actually drill out the rock and excavate it. And the way we plan to do it is through something called controlled blasting. Now, controlled blasting, when you hear the word blasting, this is not like Diwali fireworks or even open quarrying. The word controlled implies that this will be done in a very scientific manner. And what is the consequence of doing it in a scientific manner? Because I do not have the graphs to show you, but what I can say is the following. Suppose I make one controlled blast, it's called a pull. This pull only lasts a few seconds, like 1, 2, 3, it's done. The blast is finished, its vibrations, everything are over. Now, even though it lasts only a few seconds, how will those vibrations travel from the point of the blast to some places further away? I mean, what will be the effect felt far away? So the calculations of the engineers show that this vibrations damp down exponentially, that means very, very fast, as you go farther away from the blast site. To give an example, if you are a few hundred meters away, say about half a kilometer or even less from the blast site, the vibration, and remember this vibration lasts only a few seconds, is less than 1 millimeter. The ground vibration is less than 1 millimeter, which is probably this much. Okay? So if you go a kilometer away, you will hardly feel any vibrations, and people are worried about the impact of this on several dams, and all these dams happen to be located in Kerala on the other side actually, and they're about 40 to 50 kilometers away, these dams, and you can see from this calculation that there will be no effect felt at all on dams which are so far away, and even in fact within a kilometer you can see that the vibrations will be very, very small. So we do not expect that there will be any impact of these vibrations on any of the surrounding villages or their houses or anything at all.
Also, this type of controlled blasting is been used for making other tunnels in Ooty, Nilgiris.
Yes.
So can you tell a little more?
Yes, we have also been learning a lot about various tunnels, especially in South India. Controlled blasting has been used to build tunnels. I would like to highlight two different examples. One is the site in Nilgiris, in the Tamil Nadu side, in a place called Singara, where the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board has dug nearly 13 kilometers of tunnels to build an underground power project called Pushet. Now, this was constructed below the Glenmorgan forebay, which is where the water is being held in order to turn the turbines. So there is a forebay on the top, and there's a very steep tunnel at 60-degree angle coming down 1 kilometer underground to where the power is generated by turning the turbines, and then the water is taken away by underground tunnels to join the river outside. So this was done very safely. No impact was felt at all on the dam, holding dam above. In addition to that, the entrance to this underground power station, the entrance tunnel, it's also a horizontal tunnel. This tunnel, the portal of this tunnel, the entrance, is just 200 meters away from a heritage power station called Singara Powerhouse, and there was no effect at all on the powerhouse. In fact, it took more than 10 years for them to dig this entire complex of tunnels, and actually the Singara Powerhouse was working all through. The second example I want to take is that of Idukki itself in Kerala. Idukki Dam was commissioned in 1973. It was envisaged in late 60s, but the construction was completed in 73. Also, Idukki Dam has an underground powerhouse. In many of these places in the Western Ghats, the powerhouses are underground to minimize the ecological impact. So Idukki also has an underground powerhouse, and this underground powerhouse was only finished in 1976. It has a 2 kilometer long tunnel to bring the water from the dam underground to two pressure shafts which are nearly 1 kilometer long each. It comes to this underground powerhouse, and then the water comes out again through a 1 kilometer tail race tunnel, and all this was completed 3 years later in 1976. And the dam was commissioned already, and no damage was felt at all to this dam, which is actually above, right, because all the tunneling is below. So there's actually proof already, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, that such dams are very stable against such construction.
What about the muck which is been removed from the making of the tunnel? Is it granite type? It will be stored somewhere, or is it used?
Of course, we are building this 2 kilometer long tunnel and a complex of caverns at the end of it. And when we excavate all this material, the excavated material is called muck. Now, muck, to the English mind, the muck has a very negative connotation, but this is a technical name for whatever comes out through the tunnel. And in our case, because this is Chanukite rock, because this is extremely solid monolithic Chanukite rock, more than 90% of this is going to come out in chunks and boulders. So it is like granite. It is very useful as construction material. So though you give the name muck to it, it is not something that is going to be dumped somewhere and will pollute the surroundings. It will be lifted and disposed of to be used later as construction material. But even in the interim, when we bring out the material and before it is lifted off, just in case there is a problem in taking it away, we have in the INO land, we have acquired some land around for building the portal, the access to the tunnel, and some surface facilities like our offices, some hostels, guest house, and various other buildings that we will need just outside the tunnel. And we have kept enough space over there to have a muck storage yard, and it has proper retaining walls, and it will be nicely covered so that even the less than 5% of it, which is in more powdery form, will not disperse and pollute the neighboring countryside. So this can be well taken care of, and as I said, the largest part of it is very useful material, and in fact we have asked the Tamil Nadu government for permission to use 10% of it for our own construction purposes. That is the amount that we will need for ourselves.
Okay. Now let me come to the flora and fauna in this region. Is it affected environmentally? How it will affect this flora and fauna in this region?
As I said, SACON has done this study for us. One thing it is necessary to appreciate is the peculiar geography of this region. This is kind of the plateau of Theni. It's extremely flat. As you approach, in fact, the mountains are in the distance, but even the approach to the mountain, almost to the foot of the mountain, is completely flat, and suddenly it rises in front of you, and rise is very steep. This is why you can get 1,000-meter cover in 1.9 kilometer distance of tunnel. What happens because of this is that the geography, the ecology of this place is completely distinct from the ecology on the other side, the Kerala side, which is where the mountain tops are. We are at the bottom of the mountain, and the top of the mountain is very green, very lush, ecologically very, very rich, with both flora and fauna. A lot of large wildlife, including elephants, are there. But at the bottom, because all the rainfall is on the Kerala side, it's a very low rainfall, semi-arid region. It's actually scrub. It's not even forest. We are not going to cut a single tree during this construction. And if you see photos of the place, you will see that it's very, very, very sparsely populated. The flora, there are some identified vulnerable species, but they are not located only inside our land. They are completely dispersed in the entire Theni region. So there will be no difficulty with that. And we are not going to cut any trees over there. And there is no large wildlife at all reported from that site. So there will be no impact on either flora and fauna. And if you go through our environmental impact assessment document, which is available online at the INO website, you will see that the density of both flora and fauna is very, very low for a site which is actually in the Western Ghats. And this is why we believe that we have found a site where we can manage this project with minimal environmental impact.
Let me come to another topic where you have been involved in the outreach program in Theni district.
Yes.
So can you tell me something about this program?
Well, it was mostly accidental since I am one of the few people in the collaboration who speak Tamil. I should again reiterate that this is an all India project. We have institutions from Kashmir down to American College in Madurai, and then from Bombay to Calcutta. So really our people are spread all over India. But to do outreach among the local people, obviously you need to know Tamil, and then there are a few of us who do speak the language, and therefore when we have done outreach in that area. So we have started the outreach from somewhere, I think, late in 2009. Locals had a lot of questions, of course, to ask. I think more or less the questions were the same. It's a very unusual project. They find it very hard to comprehend why we should, leave our comfortable, labs in various big cities and come to a very remote area and do our physics there. So there's a certain element of fear, suspicion. But then we have gone and talked a great deal. We have even talked about the physics of neutrinos, and I think now many of our farmer friends there appreciate what neutrinos are, that they are not part of atoms, and that they are not sitting either inside the atomic nucleus or in atoms, that they are very weakly interacting. And all this was communicated in many, many installments, sometimes to the public, sometimes to school children, sometimes to colleges. We have visited not only in the Potipuram Panchayat itself, but in Theni, Usilampatti, Madurai, all the way down to Kambam. Actually, in colleges we have gone and given lectures and talks over there. And as a slow process, we have repeatedly, clarified their doubts. And every time they asked a question, we put it as a frequently asked question, gave an answer to it, gave it in Tamil as well as put it up in English on our website, and made a collection of these facts and distributed it among the people, so that one by one their fears were allayed. And finally, I think it was July 8th, I think in 2010, we had a large meeting in Potipuram itself, in a high school in Ramakrishnappuram, which is about few kilometers away from our proposed site. And there were more than 1,200 villages present over there, including local MLAs from Bodhi and Uttamapalyam who had come. Panchayat president was present, and the meeting was convened by the district collector, then district collector Shri P. Muthuveeran, IAS. And at that place, the presentations were made in Tamil, and all the various leaders offered their comments and their opinions, at the end of which the Panchayat president responded favorably to the project, and the district collector officially mandated that with the full support of the Panchayat and the local community, that INO can come up in this area. And this was more than 2 years ago in July 2010. And we continue this outreach. Even last month, there was a program in the Madurai to Theni road on the highway college over there. And we are continuing to do this on and off. And in fact, we are very happy to go and talk about our project whenever people are interested and they call us to do this outreach activity.
In addition, let me ask about the Kerala outreach program, which you have undergone now in the last week.
Yes, it has been very interesting, though rather exhausting. I actually want to say that I came here 4 years ago. I came to Kottayam, MG University, and talked about INO, but it was not a sustained activity like this. We have been traveling through Kerala. We have begun in Trivandrum, and then we came to Kottayam, then to Cochin, and then to Calicut. So we have tried to cover many universities and colleges in this region. We have addressed many students, both in BSc and MSc in physics, and we have talked about both what is the science goals and science possibilities of INO, as well as what will be the ecological impact, or if any at all, of setting up such a project, and in fact, in particular, what will be the impact on various sensitive regions and constructions in Kerala. One thing I want to highlight about this is that I was very impressed with the numbers of students who are doing MSc in physics in Kerala. Unfortunately, I don't see in Tamil Nadu so many students opting for master's degree in physics, and I'm very heartened to see that physics still has the capability to attract so many students, and they listened very carefully. They have asked many interesting and very challenging questions sometimes about neutrinos, dark matter, origin of the universe, and what will be the effect of what all we study on all these quantities. And it was a very nice and very interesting discussion, and very lively. It was something that I think a lesson that we should take home, that there are still many students who are very keen on doing pure science research, and as a part of the outreach activity, a very important goal of our outreach activity is not only to tell people that this is a very unusual project that is completely harmless, but also use it as a way or a vehicle in which we can attract more and more students to staying in science, to tell them about this opportunity that they can do very good quality science experiment and theory in India, and therefore to offer them more avenues for research. This is one thing that has come out of this outreach program. The other, of course, was a lot of media attention that we got over the last few days, and now we have been trying to reach out to the Malayalam media, because that is something that we have definitely been lagging behind in, and we hope that by doing these kinds of interactions and by with the cooperation of the Malayalam press, that we will be able to reach even more people and tell them about our project and what it involves.
Thank you to be part of the interface.
Yes, thank you very much.
Hello. Today we will be discussing about the aesthetic theory of Immanuel Kant. We experience various phenomena in nature. This experience happens within space and time. Immanuel Kant called the process of sensory experience as Anschauung, which is popularly translated as intuition. His usage of the word intuition should not be confused with the mystical usage of the term. Intuition for Kant is the way we convert noumenon into phenomenon. Let me explain the term noumenon. Noumenon is the reality of an object beyond its sensory appearance. It is the real existence of the object. Let us look at a tree outside. It appears to us as a tree standing outside. But in actuality, what we experience is the appearance of a tree within ourselves. Its appearance is a phenomenon in nature. There is no way we can be certain that whether it exists in reality the way it appears to us, because even space and time are functions of the mind. We are so intimately familiar with the feeling of touch, we tend to forget that it is also a sensory experience. Space and time are considered by Kant to be necessary preconditions of the mind. They should exist before inducing the outside world. The realm of phenomena is the world of sensory reality, and the noumenal realm is equated with the world of the actual. Kant used the term intuition for the experience through sense organs. In Kant's theory of knowledge, the term transcendent is used as being beyond the limits of experience and hence unknowable. Like Plato, Kant also had to theorize about a world of pure ideas. Kant claimed that sensed presentations were of only appearances and not things as they are in themselves. That is why Kant is considered as a transcendental idealist. Actually, he is the founder of the philosophical movement Transcendental Idealism. Kantian concepts are significant in many ways. To a student of aesthetics, the study of Kant's philosophy is very important because though it was Alexander Baumgarten who formulated aesthetics as a separate branch of philosophy, it was Immanuel Kant who substantiated its theory. His major treatises are Critique of Pure Reason, Critique of Practical Reason, and the Critique of Judgment. The Critique of Judgment, published in 1790, is considered as the foundational treatise in modern philosophical aesthetics. Even before this, in 1763, Kant produced an early treatise on aesthetics, Observations on the Feeling of the Beautiful and Sublime. But the Critique of Judgment is his most influential book. In it, Kant states that it is our faculty of judgment that enables us to have experience of the beautiful. Let us look deeper into the definition of the term judgment. Kant defines judgment as the subsumption of a particular under a universal. The term subsumption means incorporating something under a more general category. Judgment acts as a mediator between two faculties of human mind, understanding and reason. The faculty of understanding is that which supplies concepts, that is universals, and reason is that which draws inferences. To explain the concept, let us think that we are watching a sunset. It appears beautiful to us. We say, the sunset is very beautiful. By this statement, we imply that the sunset is beautiful to another person too, but the experience of the beauty of the sunset is subjective. If the experience is purely subjective, then a science of beauty will not be possible. Then we can't form any general principles of the beautiful. The experience of the beautiful cannot be purely objective too. Then every beautiful object will appear beautiful to everybody. This is not the case in reality. To overcome this dilemma, Kant proposed a kind of interpersonal existence of the sense of judgment. The first part of the Critique of Judgment is Critique of Aesthetic Judgment. In this, Kant discusses the four possible reflective judgments: the agreeable, the beautiful, the sublime, and the good. Reflective judgment is defined as that use of judgment in which we seek to find unknown universals for given particulars rather than to apply given universals to particulars. Aesthetic judgment is considered to be a form of reflective judgment. Another form of judgment is determinate judgment. In determinate judgment, the concept contains enough information to form a direct judgment. The question Kant posed in the Critique of Judgment is whether there are a priori conditions for making judgments based on the experience of pleasure. As you probably know, a priori knowledge is the knowledge independent of experience. According to Kant, a priori knowledge is transcendental, while a posteriori knowledge is empirical, based on experience. Concepts such as time, space and cause are counted as a priori forms of the mind, as already stated. In Critique of Judgment, Kant discusses four moments of aesthetic judgment which make something appear beautiful. Let us examine the definitions from this book in Kant's own words. The first moment of judgment of taste. The judgment of taste is aesthetic. Kant says, if we wish to discern whether something is beautiful or not, we do not relate the representation of it to its object by means of rational understanding. Instead, we relate the representation through imagination. The judgment of taste, therefore, is not a cognitive judgment, is not logical, but it is aesthetic. Definition of the beautiful derived from the first moment. Taste is the faculty of estimating an object or a mode of representation by means of a delight or aversion apart from any interest. The object of such a delight is called beautiful. Second moment of judgment of taste as to its quantity. Aesthetic judgments become universally agreeable, that is, though the experience is subjective, there is an agreement between subjects that the experience is beautiful. Definition of the beautiful drawn from the second moment. The beautiful is such that which pleases universally without a concept. Third moment of judgments of taste. Moment of the relation of purposes. The beautiful is understood to have a purpose, but at the same time without any definite purpose. The sole foundation of the judgment of taste is the form of purposiveness of an object. The pure judgment of taste is independent of charm and emotion. A judgment of taste which is uninfluenced by charm or emotion, though these may be associated with the delight in the beautiful, and whose determining ground therefore is simply purposiveness of form, is a pure judgment of taste. The judgment of taste is entirely independent of the concept of perfection. Definition of the beautiful derived from the third moment. Beauty is a form of purposiveness of an object so far as perceived apart from the object's purpose. Fourth moment of the judgment of taste as to the modality of the delight in the object. The subjective necessity attributed to a judgment of taste is conditioned. The condition of the necessity advanced by a judgment of taste is the idea of a common sense. The necessity of the universal assent that is thought in a judgment of taste is a subjective necessity which under the presupposition of a common sense is represented as objective. Definition of the beautiful drawn from the fourth moment. The beautiful is that which apart from a concept is cognized as object of a necessary delight. The beautiful is what pleases in the mere estimate formed of it, consequently not by intervention of any feeling of sense in accordance with a concept of the understanding. From this it follows at once that it must please apart from all interest. Kant uses the term imagination to define the mental faculty which allows the apprehension of any object. Imagination happens every time sensory stimuli is received. The term understanding is used as the faculty of conceptualization. One uses these faculties to comprehend any object, but when a special type of harmony is created between these two, we experience a pleasurable feeling. The faculties in a free play derive harmony. Then we judge the object to be beautiful. From the critic of judgment, two concepts stand apart as most significant. A beautiful object has purposiveness without a purpose, and what the viewer derives from the beautiful is disinterested satisfaction. Kant is of opinion that the pleasure one derives from an agreeable object is not disinterested. The pleasure in the good is also not disinterested. Only the pleasure from the beautiful is disinterested. The experience of the beautiful represents a pleasure in order, harmony, delicacy, and the like. A purpose comes about when a concept, that is essence, the product of reason, precedes an object or event of existence and brings the event or object into existence to satisfy one's desire or interest. Kant has defined another experience, the sublime, as distinctive from the experience of the beautiful. The sublime is what pleases immediately by reason of its opposition to the interest of sense. It is an aesthetic response of awe before the infinite or the overwhelming. I will explain this concept a bit further. Let us start by looking at what Kant described as a schemata. A schemata of an object or phenomenon is the ontological knowledge of its form. For everything in nature, we hold a corresponding schema inside us. We classify things according to this schema. What will happen if an object or phenomenon has become so huge in magnitude or force? It goes beyond our capacity for comprehension. Our sensory faculty is overwhelmed with awe by its presence. Then we derive a response in its presence. If we are disinterested, this becomes an aesthetic response and is experienced as sublime. For example, imagine that we are standing in front of a mighty waterfall, contemplating it. The magnitude and force of the waterfall is such that it overwhelms us, and the contemplative quality of the mind generates the feeling of sublime. What if we are in a boat which is uncontrollably drifting towards the waterfall? Even then, we become overwhelmed by the presence of the waterfall. But because we are participants in the phenomenon and not mere spectators, our awe and fear become real. We are overwhelmed by emotion and purposefulness. Because we lose our disinterestedness, the aesthetic response as sublime won't arise in this situation. Kant has defined two kinds of sublime, the mathematical sublime and the dynamic sublime. Mathematical sublime is simple to understand if we think of the experience we derive from looking at the countless stars in a clear sky. Mathematical sublime leads us to the concept of infinity, towards the edge of reason. Reason cannot comprehend the concept of infinity in its totality. It is only aware of the possibility of infinity by reasoning. So, at the edge of understanding, imagination is created and a harmony is derived. Thus, the possibility for a pleasurable experience presents itself. But because of the magnitude, a feeling of awe is also generated along with an aesthetic response. Thus, mathematical sublime is aroused. Dynamic sublime, on the other hand, is related to force. We have already described the situation where the onlooker is in the presence of a mighty force, citing the example of the waterfall. So, I will now continue to another topic. Now, let us proceed to apply Kantian aesthetic to the analysis of some artworks. Observe this painting by Vincent van Gogh. Kant states, nature lends us material via law of association of empirical imagination. Genius can process this material into what surpasses nature. This is the creation of a second nature by productive imagination, which follows analogical rules and principles of reason. The Starry Night can also be taken as a representative example of dynamic sublime. Of course, Kant had applied the concept of sublime only to crude nature and not to works of art. But he has used the term crude nature to denote mountains, landforms, etc. So it is deducible that crude landscape elements represented in a work of art is also capable of evoking the feeling of sublime. Kant's concept of the genius also becomes relevant in our present context. In Critique of Judgment, Kant has put forward the idea of the genius. A genius is not an imitator. He holds originality and is capable of creating aesthetic ideas. Aesthetic idea lies beyond the realm of pure reason. Of course, creation of art needs practical skill, but an aesthetic idea is not reducible to determinate concepts. So, art cannot be fully taught while science can. Creation of art thus has to rely upon native talent. So, according to Kant, there cannot be a scientific genius. he can only be a genius up to the level of imagination. When he enters the empirical area of practical reason, he ceases to be a genius. This idea of genius was upheld by Romanticism, and 19th century saw the emergence of Bohemian artists. They upheld the Kantian concept of freedom at the presence of might. They tried to live close to nature as a romantic noble beast. As fine art can have no definite rule on how to produce or judge a work of art, it is genius who creates a rule applied to only one instance of artwork. Van Gogh, in his Starry Night, has devised a rule of representing the dynamic force of vast magnitude. Kant has also categorized arts into mechanical and aesthetic. By mechanical arts, he did not intend handicrafts. Mechanical arts hold definite concept of a purpose which is to be produced. The intention of fine arts is pleasure alone. Kant also differentiates between agreeable and fine art. The agreeable creates pleasure only through sensation, whereas fine art is capable of creating pleasure through sensation and cognition. That is why a creatively original artwork like the Starry Night offers the possibility to be read in many ways. It ceases to be an object of pure sensation or reason. It is capable of producing a harmony between the faculty of imagination and understanding. Let us examine another painting by Caspar David Friedrich, a German romantic painter who was contemporary to Kant. This is an image by Caspar David Friedrich, The Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, done in 1818. In this painting, we again see the contemplation of the sublime. Usually, the romantic landscape remains one of the transient but mighty nature of the a priori concepts of the mind, space and time. The figure of the human is usually dwarfed by the presence of crude natural elements or forces. But man, even while confronted by the forces of nature, shows the spirit of human freedom. This painting by Caspar David Friedrich shows a man who is the protagonist of this freedom. I suggest you try to learn more on Rousseau, Goethe, Schelling, Hegel, Coleridge and Wordsworth. It will also be helpful to have a basic understanding of the philosophy of Leibniz, Hume and Burke. A familiarity with the concepts presented by these philosophers will enhance our understanding of Kant. The philosophy of Immanuel Kant has influenced a number of modern formalist critics like Roger Fry, Clive Bell and Greenberg. Kant is considered by them also to be a formalist. Now it is time we conclude this session on the aesthetic theory of Kant. Till our next class, bye.
to the session on biological aspects of development. Development begins with conception. Conception occurs when fertilization creates a zygote, an organism formed by the union of a sperm and an egg. All the other cells in our body developed from this single cell. Each of the cells contains enduring messages from our parents carried on the chromosomes that lie within its nucleus. Each chromosome houses many genes, the functional units in hereditary transmission. Genes carry the details of our hereditary blueprints, which are revealed gradually throughout. The prenatal period extends from conception to birth, usually encompassing 9 months of pregnancy. A great deal of important developments occurs before birth. In fact, development during the prenatal period is remarkably rapid. If you were an average-sized newborn and your physical growth had continued during the first year of life at a prenatal pace, by your first birthday you would have weighed 200 pounds. In this section, we will examine the usual course of prenatal development and discuss how environmental events can leave their mark on development even before birth exposes the newborn to the outside world. The course of prenatal development. The prenatal period is divided into 3 phases. The germinal stage, that is the first 2 weeks, the embryonic stage 2 weeks to 2 months, and the fetal stage 2 months to birth. Some key developments in these phases are outlined here. Germinal stage. The germinal stage is the first phase of prenatal development, encompassing the first 2 weeks after conception. This brief stage begins when a zygote is created through fertilization. Within 36 hours, rapid cell division begins and the zygote becomes a microscopic mass of multiplying cells. This mass of cells slowly migrates along the mother's fallopian tube to the uterine cavity. On about the 7th day, the cell mass begins to implant itself in the uterine wall. This process takes about a weekend and is far from automatic. Many zygotes are rejected at this point. As many as 1 in 5 pregnancies end with the woman never being aware that conception has occurred. During the implantation process, the placenta begins to form. The placenta is a structure that allows oxygen and nutrients to pass into the fetus from the mother's bloodstream and bodily waste to pass out to the mother. This critical exchange takes place across thin membranes that block the passage of blood cells, keeping the fetal and maternal bloodstreams separate. Embryonic stage. The embryonic stage is the second stage of prenatal development, lasting from 2 weeks until the end of the 2nd month. During this stage, most of the vital organs and bodily systems begin to form in the developing organism, which is now called an embryo. Structures such as the heart, spine, and brain emerge gradually as cell division becomes more specialized. Although the embryo is typically only about an inch long at the end of this stage, it is already beginning to look human. Arms, legs, hands, feet, fingers, toes, eyes, and ears are already discernible. The embryonic stage is a period of great vulnerability because virtually all the basic physiological structures are being formed. If anything interferes with normal development during the embryonic phase, the effects can be devastating. Most miscarriages occur during this period. Most major structural birth defects are also due to problems that occur during the embryonic stage. Fetal stage. The fetal stage is the third stage of prenatal development, lasting from 2 months through birth. The first 2 months of the fetal stage bring rapid bodily growth as muscles and bones begin to form. The developing organism, now called a fetus, becomes capable of physical movements as skeletal structures harden. Organs formed in the embryonic stage continue to grow and gradually begin to function. The sense of hearing, for example, is functional by around 20 to 24 weeks. During the final 3 months of the prenatal period, brain cells multiply at a brisk pace. A layer of fat is deposited under the skin to provide insulation, and the respiratory and digestive systems mature. All of these changes ready the fetus for life outside the cozy, supportive environment of its mother's womb. Sometime between 22 weeks and 26 weeks, the fetus reaches the age of viability, the age at which a baby can survive in the event of premature birth. Thanks to advances in medical technology, the age of viability has declined in recent decades in modern societies. Environmental factors and prenatal development. Although the fetus develops in the protective buffer of the womb, events in the external environment can affect it indirectly through the mother. Because the developing organism and its mother are linked through the placenta, a mother's eating habits, drug use, and physical health, among other things, can affect prenatal development and have long-term health consequences. Maternal nutrition. The developing fetus needs a variety of essential nutrients. Thus, it is not surprising that severe maternal malnutrition increases the risk of birth complications and neurological defects for the newborn. Maternal drug use. A major source of concern about fetal and infant well-being is a mother's consumption of drugs, including such widely used substances as tobacco and alcohol, as well as prescription and recreational drugs. Unfortunately, most drugs consumed by a pregnant woman can pass through the membrane of the placenta. Virtually all recreational drugs can be harmful, with sedatives, narcotics, and cocaine being particularly dangerous. Alcohol consumption during pregnancy also carries risks. It has long been clear that heavy drinking by a mother can be hazardous to a fetus. Fetal alcohol syndrome is a collection of congenital inborn problems associated with excessive alcohol use during pregnancy. Typical problems include microcephaly, a small head, heart defects, irritability, hyperactivity, and delayed mental and motor developments. Maternal illness. The fetus is largely defenseless against infections because its immune system matures relatively late in the prenatal period. The placenta screens out quite a number of infectious agents, but not all. Thus, many maternal illnesses can interfere with prenatal development. Diseases such as measles, rubella, that is German measles, syphilis, and chickenpox can be hazardous to the fetus, with the nature of any damage depending in part on when the mother contracts the illness. The HIV virus that causes AIDS can also be transmitted by pregnant women to their offspring. Basic principles of development. Growth and development are the result of both nature and nurture. They are influenced by a combination of genetic, biological, environmental, and experiential factors. An individual child's progression through the developmental stages is a result of a unique mix of physical and mental predispositions and attributes, as well as environmental conditions such as poverty, prenatal drug exposure, or empathic parenting. A continual and cumulative process. Human development is best described as a continual and cumulative process. The one constant is change, and the changes that occur at each major phase of life can have important implications for the future. A holistic process. Humans are physical, cognitive, and social beings, and each of these components of self depends in part on changes taking place in other areas of development. Plasticity. Plasticity refers to the brain capacity for change in response to positive or negative life experiences. Although we have described development as a continual and cumulative process, and noted that past events often have implications for the future, developmentalists know that the course of development can change abruptly if important aspects of one's life change. Historical or cultural context. No single portrait of development is accurate for all cultures, social classes, or racial and ethnic groups. Each culture, subculture, and social class transmits a particular pattern of beliefs, values, customs, and skills to its younger generations, and the content of this cultural socialization has a strong influence on the attributes and competencies that individuals display. Development is also influenced by societal changes, historical events, etc. The nature or nurture. Perhaps no theoretical controversy has been any more heated than this nature-nurture issue. Human development primarily can be the result of nature, that is biological forces, or nurture, that is environmental forces. The active-passive. The active or passive theme goes beyond considering the child's conscious choices and behaviors. That is, developmentalists consider a child active in development whenever any aspect of the child has an effect on the environment the child is experiencing. So, a temperamentally difficult infant who challenges the patience of his loving but frustrated parents is actively influencing his development, even though he is not consciously choosing to be temperamentally difficult. Similarly, a young preteen girl who has gone through the biological changes of puberty earlier than most of her classmates and friends did not choose this event. Nevertheless, the fact that she appears so much more mature than her peers is likely to have dramatic effects on the ways others treat her and the environment she experiences in general. Interconnected domains. Development occurs across a number of interconnected domains. Development in each domain is closely interwoven with development in the others, though it may not proceed evenly across domains in a parallel fashion. Example, language development may at times outstrip physical development or vice versa. Three major domains are physical, cognitive or linguistic, and socio-emotional. Development is progressive. Development is progressive over time. It unfolds in a series of stages in a consistent sequence. Though each individual develops in a unique way, the sequence of development is consistent for all individuals. For example, in general, children gain control over their bodies from head to toe and from the center out. An infant will be able to focus his or her eyes and follow an object before being able to lift his or her head. For each stage of development, there are milestones that tell whether or not the individual has achieved typical or normal development in the three domains. More broadly, there are developmental tasks that each individual needs to complete for each major developmental stage in each domain before he or she can proceed with optimum hope for success to the next stage. If tasks at a particular stage are not adequately completed, problems are likely to appear at future stages of development. Development does not always proceed evenly or at the same rate. Individuals' development does not always proceed evenly or at the same rate. Some degree of variation around what is considered the normal time for an individual to complete a developmental task should still be considered within the normal range. These normal variations would be smaller in the case of an infant in a period of rapid growth and development, but might be as much as 6 months for an adolescent. Development proceeds most rapidly in the earliest months and years of life, especially before age 5. Deficiencies in care at that stage can have especially serious effects on physical, cognitive, and social development. For example, rapid brain and body growth before age 2 makes infants highly susceptible to malnutrition, which, if not corrected, can lead to brain damage, mental retardation, and or growth retardation. Environmental and cultural context of development. The family. In power and breadth of influence, no context equals the family. The family creates bonds between people that are unique. Attachments to parents and siblings usually last a lifetime and serve as models for relationships in the wider world of neighborhood, school and community. Within the family, children learn the language, skills and social and moral values of their culture. And at all ages, people turn to family members for information, assistance and interesting and pleasurable interaction. Warm and gratifying family ties predict physical and psychological health throughout development. In contrast, isolation or alienation from the family is often associated with developmental problems. Contemporary researchers view the family as a network interdependent of relationships. The ecological systems theory that has bidirectional influences exist in which the behavior of each family member affect those of others. Indeed, the very term system implies that the responses of all family members are related. This system influences and operate both directly and indirectly. Direct influences. When we observe family members interacting, it can be seen that kind and patient communication evokes cooperative, harmonious responses, whereas harshness and impatience engender angry and resistive behavior. Each of these reactions in turn forges a new link in interactive chain. In first instance, a positive message tends to follow. In the second, a negative or avoidant one tends to occur. For example, when parents' requests are accompanied by warmth and affection, children tend to cooperate. And when children willingly comply, their parents are likely to be warm and gentle in the future. In contrast, parents who discipline with harshness and impatience have children who refuse and rebel. And because children's misbehavior is stressful for parents, they may increase their use of punishment, leading to more unruliness by the child. Indirect influences. Bronfenbrenner calls the indirect influence of others as the effect of third parties. Third parties can serve as supports for development. For example, when parents' marital relationship is warm and considerate, mothers and fathers praise and stimulate their children more and scold them less. In contrast, when a marriage is tense and hostile, parents tend to be less responsive to their children's needs and to criticize, express anger and punish. Similarly, children can affect their parents' relationship in powerful ways. For example, some children show lasting emotional problems when their parents' divorce happens. When family relationships are strained by third parties, other members like grandparents may help restore effective interaction. They can promote children's development in many ways, both directly by responding warmly to the child and indirectly by providing parents with child rearing advice, models of child rearing skill and even financial assistance. Of course, like any indirect influence, grandparents can sometimes be harmful. When quarrelsome relations exist between grandparents and parents, parent-child communication may suffer. Adapting to change. According to Bronfenbrenner's theory, chronosystem, the interplay of forces within the family, is dynamic and ever-changing. Important events such as the birth of a baby, a change of jobs, or an elderly parent joining the household due to declining health create challenges that modify existing relationships. The way such events affect family interaction depends on the support provided by other family members as well as on the developmental status of each participant. In recent decades, a declining birth rate, a high divorce rate, and expansion of women's roles have led to a smaller family size. This combined with a longer lifespan means that more generations are alive with fewer members in the youngest ones, leading to a top-heavy family structure. Consequently, Young people today are more likely to have older relatives than at any time in history, a circumstance that can be enriching as well as a source of tension. Socio-economic status and family functioning. Socio-economic status, or SES. It combines three interrelated but not completely overlapping variables. 1. Years of education, and 2. The prestige of and skill required by one's job, both of which measure social status, and 3. Income, which measures economic status. As socio-economic status rises and falls, people face changing circumstances that profoundly affect family functioning. SES affects the timing and duration of phases of the family life cycle. People who work in skilled and semi-skilled manual occupations, that is machinists, truck drivers, etc., tend to marry and have children earlier as well as give birth to more children than people in white-collar and professional occupations. The two groups also differ in values and expectations. For example, when asked about personal qualities they desire for their children, lower SES parents tend to emphasize external characteristics such as obedience, politeness, neatness and cleanliness. In contrast, higher SES parents emphasize psychological traits such as curiosity, happiness, self-direction and cognitive and social maturity. In addition, fathers in higher SES families tend to be more involved in child rearing and household responsibilities. Lower SES fathers, partly because of their gender stereotyped beliefs and partly because of economic necessity, focus more on their provider role. Education also contributes to SES differences in family interaction. Furthermore, the greater economic security of higher SES families permits them to devote more time, energy and material resources to nurturing their children's psychological characteristics. The impact of poverty. When families slip into poverty, development is seriously threatened. Joblessness, a high divorce rate, a lower remarriage rate among women than men, widowhood and inadequate government programs to meet family needs is responsible for developmental problems. The child poverty rate is higher than that of any age group. These circumstances are particularly worrisome because the earlier poverty begins, the deeper it and the longer it lasts, the more devastating its effects on physical and mental health and school achievement. The constant stresses that accompany poverty gradually weaken the family system. Poor families have many daily hassles: no food, improper clothing, no shelter, etc. When daily crises arise, family members become depressed, irritable and distracted and hostile interactions increase. These outcomes are especially severe in families that must live in poor housing and dangerous neighborhoods, conditions that make everyday existence more difficult while reducing social supports that help people cope with economic hardship. Most homeless families consist of women with children under age 5. Besides health problems which affect most homeless people, homeless children suffer from developmental delays and serious emotional stress. Cultural values and practices. Culture shape family interaction and community settings beyond the home, in short, all aspects of daily life. Many of us remain blind to aspects of our own cultural heritage until we see them in relation to the practices of others. Although many people value independence and privacy, not all citizens share the same values. Some are part of subcultures, groups of people with beliefs and customs that differ from those of the larger culture. Many minority groups have cooperative family structures which help protect their members from the harmful effects of poverty. Within the extended family, grandparents play meaningful roles in guiding younger generations. Adults with employment, marital or child rearing difficulties receive assistance and emotional support, and caregiving is enhanced for children and the elderly. Broad dimension on which cultures and subcultures differ are the extent to which collectivism versus individualism is emphasized. In collectivist societies, people define themselves as part of a group and stress group goals over individual goals. In individualistic societies, people think of themselves as separate entities and are largely concerned with their own personal needs. Although individualism tends to increase as cultures become more complex, cross-national differences remain. The United States is strongly individualistic and India is a collectivist. Let us summarize what we have discussed so far. The chapter provides a detailed picture of biological aspects of development. It discusses how a zygote gradually changes to a newborn. The prenatal period is described in detail with three phases like germinal stage, embryonic stage and fetal stage. The different environmental factors which affect prenatal development are explained. The chapter highlights the important principles of development. It also discusses the environmental and cultural context of development, which includes the family, socio-economic status and the impact of poverty. Now you can try to answer the questions given here. Discuss in detail the process of prenatal development. Explain how environmental factors which influence prenatal development. What are the important principles of development? Development is influenced by environmental factors. Discuss. How cultural context influence development. Hope that you may go through the reference books for further reading. Developmental Psychology, Childhood and Adolescence, 8th edition by Schaffer Dr. and Krip K. Senegage, Learning, Wadsworth, 2010. Developmental Psychology, a Lifespan Approach by E.B. Herlock, Tata McGraw-Hill Publishing Company Limited, New Delhi, India, 1997. Lifespan Development by J.S. Turner and D.B. Helms, Hort, Ringhart and Whitson, Inkforth, Watt, India, 1987. Thank you for watching this program. We can meet again with another topic. Have a nice day.